Hi, welcome to Prime Recap. A group of people are taken to a deserted beach where time passes abnormally, causing everyone to age years in just a few minutes. Today we're going to recap the story of the movie, Old, from 2021. The Kappa family is on a vacation trip to the Anamika resort. Priska, the family's mother, says she found the place on the internet, but didn't get much information about it. Upon arriving at the resort, while Priska and Guy were registering for rooms, their sons Trent and Maddox begin to venture around the place. The kids have a drink brought to them by Crystal, a resort employee, and end up meeting Idlib, the manager's nephew, who practically lives there. The next morning, Trent and Idlib hang out on the beach together. They ask all the people their names and their respective professions. Maddox, on the other hand, doesn't feel very comfortable in that place and spends much of her time alone. That same night, the little boy receives a letter from his new friend. Idlib writes a coded message, and upon translating it with a kind of special alphabet created by his friend, he discovers that it is an invitation to have ice cream the next day. In the morning, all the families gather for breakfast at the resort. The manager of the place informs the Kappa family that he is happy about the presence of the new visitors and for this reason has a proposal to make. It is a trip to an island paradise surrounded by unique minerals. The place is a private property and frequented only by select people. The family finds it a unique opportunity and decides to accept the invitation, at which point Idlib shows up at the resort to talk to Trent, but his uncle warns him to leave the place and leave the visitors alone. In this instant, the whole atmosphere of the place gets strange when a woman has signs of convulsion due to a serious health problem. Her name is Patricia and she was accompanied by her spouse Jerry. They quickly receive help from a visitor who is a doctor and in a few seconds the situation returns to normal. A few hours later, the Kappa family drives to a van that will take them to the island paradise. Besides them, other people have also been invited to go there, such as Charles's family. The driver takes them to the entrance of the restricted area. He informs them that they must follow the marked trail to get to the beach. Furthermore, the employee explains that he will pick them up at 5 p.m., but if they wish to return earlier, they only need to contact the resort. The group then makes their way through a forest and a few minutes later passes through a rocky path. After a long walk, everyone arrives at the desired location, a large beach paradise with an incredible view. Maddox realizes that the sinister man was the famous rapper Midsized. She is a fan of the singer, but her father warns her not to disturb him. After all, he must have arrived at that place to stay out of the spotlight. A short time later, Kara and Maddox find some rusty cutlery from the resort on the beach. In addition, other objects were abandoned and buried in the sand. At that moment, Trent was swimming alone nearby, but the boy feels something touching his body, and when he turns around he sees the body of a person. He runs towards his parents and explains what happened. Guy and Charles decide to pull the body out of the water. It was a woman with no signs of life. The rapper, who had been quiet in his corner before, observes the situation and his nose begins to bleed. He talks to the two men and explains that the girl was with him a few nights ago. The young man says that they were alone in the place and she decided to go for a swim and has not returned so far. Guy doesn't completely believe the man's account and questions him as to why his nose was bleeding, but the rapper replies that he has nothing more to say. Charles deduces that the girl was attacked by the rapper and tried to defend herself and hit him in the nose. However, Midsized replies that this is not what happened. This bleeding is also a mystery to him. While trying to contact the authorities, another couple arrives at the beach. Jerry and Patricia explain that they should have arrived together with the others, but there was a delay. Then they are quickly informed of the possible crime that has taken place there. Jerry, upon discovering this, tries to go after the driver who took them to the beach, but as he tries to get out of that place, he ends up fainting due to a strong pressure on his head. Crystal runs to Charles to ask for his help, saying that her mother-in-law has serious breathing complications. The doctor rushes to her and tries to help in some way, but the little lady asks only that her son help the rest of the group. A few minutes pass and she no longer shows any signs of life. Charles believes that she was frightened by the possible crime scene on the beach, and even though he has tried several times to revive her, he has not been able to bring her back. Priska also asks the doctor for help and informs him that something strange is happening to her son. Charles looks at the boy from afar and states that there is nothing wrong with the boy, because he was playing normally with the other children. The Kappa family boy again asks the name and profession of the two visitors. Jerry and Patricia are told by Maddox that their brother memorizes the names and professions of everyone he meets, this being a game he created. The couple then tries to guess the age of the children. They observe Trent and claim that the boy is around 11 years old, but the boy replies that he is only 6. Jerry and Patricia are displeased to hear this and decide to believe it is just a joke. Priska goes to the couple to ask about their children, but she doesn't recognize the children as soon as she sees them. Guy finds them again and is startled to realize that those were actually Trent and Maddox. While everyone was wondering what was going on in that place, Brendan, the rapper's real name, starts running to try to escape from the beach. Charles notices his strange movement and runs to catch up with him. However, as they enter the rocky path, a huge pressure begins to build in their heads. They are overcome by a strong dizziness and end up fainting. When they wake up, they realize that they are back on the coast. Priska says that they should flee from that place immediately, but she is warned that no one can get out through the stone path, because they all end up fainting due to the strong cranial pressure. At that moment, Charles approaches Brendan with a pocket knife and cuts his face. Then the doctor says he doesn't know why he did it and apologizes. When they try to look at the wound to check the depth of the cut, they realize that the wound was already healed. Everyone is startled to realize that the cut has regenerated in seconds. Minutes later, the group notices that the dog that was with Charles's family has died. They do not understand how this could have happened, as the pet was young and healthy. Maddox begins to approach Brendan. She says that when she first came to the beach, she saw the colors more vibrantly and vividly. However, now she can only see them more softly and simply. The rapper also comments that from the moment he arrived at the place, he didn't feel comfortable and even developed a nosebleed, reinforcing that it had nothing to do with the death of the woman who was with him. Meanwhile, Jerry realizes that the estimated distance to the nearest beach is about 10 pools and no one there would be able to swim against the current and get out alive, so they don't have an exit by sea. Patricia is a psychologist and asks everyone to gather immediately, because she believes that this is a hallucination. According to her, the people in that place were trying to escape from life's problems, and because they didn't want to go back to their tiring and difficult routine, they unconsciously decided not to leave the beach. Crystal supports this theory, as she was having a difficult time in her relationship with Charles. As they try to share their motives, Priska feels a strong pain in her body. Guy realizes that it was a small tumor that his wife had been carrying for years. Impressively, the disease worsens in a few seconds. Priska can't stand the pain and faints immediately afterwards. Guy understands that if he doesn't take any action, his wife will end up losing her life. After reflecting for a few moments, he asks Charles to remove the tumor from Priska's body. The doctor warns that he will not be responsible if the operation goes wrong. He asks for some items to perform the procedure and will use his pocket knife to make the incision. When making the cut, something strange happens again. The skin starts to heal at the same moment, making it impossible to remove the tumor. Guy then suggests that he and Jerry use their hands to hold the cut open until the tumor is removed. After they do this, Charles is finally able to complete the surgery. The tumor that was initially the size of a tennis ball has been removed the size of a melon. Then Priska regains consciousness and wakes up feeling well. She is informed that the tumor in her body has been successfully removed. The woman looks at the scar and does not remember feeling any pain. Brendan is intrigued by these bizarre events and goes to the place where the body of the girl who was accompanying him was. When he removes the cloth that covered her, he is confronted with a frightening sight. He shouts asking everyone to run there. When the group arrives at the site, they realize that the young woman's body had already gone through the state of decomposition, with only a few bones remaining. Jerry gathers some information based on the children's growth, and with this he believes that 30 minutes on that island is equivalent to 1 year. Jerry further states that the bodies of all the adults present there have the same average muscle mass, so the cells would be the most affected by this frightening phenomenon, so they would all age several years in a few hours. In the case of children, they would have a voracious appetite to acquire the body mass necessary to enter the adult stage. Upon mentioning this, the parents wonder where their children have been. They start to call them and realize that they were both in a small tent set up with several cloths. Trent and Kara have aged a few years, but they still have the same childish mentality, and because of this, they have experienced things that would only happen as adults. The two approach the group and everyone realizes that Kara is pregnant. Guy and Priska try to explain to Trent what happened and why Kara was pregnant. The girl begins to feel a lot of pain and Patricia asks for help to deliver the baby. Charles was no longer in full consciousness. As time goes by, he begins to talk to himself and confuse people. Crystal cannot believe what is happening to her daughter. She tries to run away, but is soon calmed down by Maddox. A few seconds pass and everyone can hear the newborn baby crying. Patricia put the baby wrapped in a cloth for a minute to clean him, but in doing so, the child lost his life as he could not breathe. Crystal panics at everything that is happening and decides to get away from everyone for a while. Maddox tries to comfort her, but she says she wants to be alone. At that moment, Patricia screams as she sees a terrifying scene. Charles was stabbing Brendan several times with his pocket knife. After the man moves away from the body, the whole group approaches Brendan, but it was too late. After this terrible act, the group is informed that Charles has mental problems, and upon arriving at the beach this only intensifies. So they take the pocket knife from his hand and understand that someone needs to keep an eye on him at all times. Jerry, realizing that the situation would get worse with each passing minute, decides that he will swim to the vicinity of another beach to get help. He claims that he was a swimmer in his school days, so he is well prepared to undertake this mission. Guy and Priska deduce that the whole trip was manipulated, because their passports and documents were left at the resort. Also, each of the families has a member with an illness, so someone handpicked who would be sent to the beach. They think of other possibilities for getting help. They imagine that maybe by climbing the rock wall they can get across to the other side without suffering from cranial pressure. Maddox talks to her mother and asks her the reason for this trip. The girl then finds out that her parents are going to separate. The girl doesn't know how to react to this and just asks for some time to think, but her mother says that they no longer have time on their side. Maddox enters the water and begins to walk aimlessly. She feels sad and scared about everything that is happening, but is surprised when a body appears floating beside her. Everyone arrives quickly at the girl's screams and realizes that that was Jerry. They deduce that the man had drowned while swimming against the current. Patricia is shocked to see that her husband lost his life in such a tragic way. Trent goes to Kara. The girl is still carrying the body of her son, and she says that all this was unfair, because she couldn't even participate in a school dance and didn't even graduate. Trent says that everything will be fine and at that moment they should give the baby his due rest. The boy takes the cloth that was in Kara's hands, and there he makes the tomb of his son. The girl acts quickly and, unhappy with everything, decides to climb the large rock wall that surrounded the entire beach. She is strong and at the same time skillful in climbing. Trent and his family ask her to stop it, but she says she must find a way to save at least her father. Incredibly, the girl manages to get very close to the end of the rock wall, but ends up falling from an immense height. With the impact of the fall, she immediately loses her life. Sometime later, the Kappa family tries to find some way out of that place. They spot Patricia near the water, the psychologist holding several buoys in her arms to try to escape by swimming. The woman says she has a sister and needs to make peace with her, because before traveling she had a terrible fight. But before she could put her plan into practice, she falls to the ground and begins to have several convulsions. Patricia struggles on until she starts foaming at the mouth, and then she takes her last breath. Guy tries to provide some help, but realizes that his vision is blurring and he cannot see the people around him. Night was approaching. Trent and Maddox start looking for some objects to use as material for a fire. They find an old notebook with some notes. Maddox claims that the owner of that notebook was a true science fiction fan, for he wrote down many mind-boggling ideas, such as birds that emit a sound capable of causing confusion in those who listen, and a place surrounded by rocks that can accelerate the aging of human cells. They then realize that these were notes from someone who had been there before them, and that in the notebook there were the names of several other people and possibly all of them had been on that beach. Trent realizes that there is someone watching them. He sees a green light in the distance on top of a mountain and possibly it was a person using a night vision camera. Night comes on the beach. The Kappa couple is sitting by a fire, when Guy notices a figure arriving in the darkness. Both are attacked with several blows of a pocket knife. Charles is completely beside himself, but the cuts he inflicts on his victims are instantly healed. Guy asks Priska to follow the children to bring them to safety. Following their mother's orders, Trent and Maddox hide in a cave and there they find Crystal. She cares too much about her appearance, but due to her aging, her body finds itself in extreme situations. Crystal crawls to Trent and Maddox, but all the bones in her body have broken and she ends up losing her life. Priska returns to help her husband. She cuts Charles with a rusty knife. With this attack, the man's body cannot regenerate, for rust is a poison to human blood. Charles has his entire bloodstream corrupted and dies soon after. Now the Kappa family is the only survivor on the island. They gather by the campfire for a little quiet time. A few seconds later, Guy looks at his family and takes his last breath of life. Priska starts walking to the sea and soon after also loses her life. The next day, Trent and Maddox are the only survivors. They are looking older and deduce that they will only have a few hours to live, so Trent suggests that they build a sand castle. While they were having fun, Trent recalls the time when he played with Idlib at the resort. He says that the two of them thought they were clever and future spies, because they always exchanged coded messages, but there was one message that he still hasn't decoded. Maddox says that Trent should find out what the message was about while there is still time. The boy makes his way to where his family's luggage was and quickly decodes the text. In it, Idlib wrote that his uncle did not like coral. Maddox looks at the horizon and sees several corals nearby. Trent deduces that this could be the way out or something that could save their lives from this bizarre phenomenon, so the two siblings decide to swim in that direction. They find a passage between the corals, but Maddox ends up getting stuck in one of them. Trent goes back to help her, but can't get his sister out. Meanwhile, a man is watching all the activity from the top of the mountain, who is the same employee responsible for taking the resort guests to the beach entrance. He talks to his superior on the phone and says that the last survivors lost their lives by drowning. The man gathers all the recorded material and takes it to a secret base. The place is a laboratory for manufacturing medicines. The scientists deliver medicines to their guinea pigs the moment they enter the resort. Since the time on the beach is different from normal, the tests happen much more effectively, as they can get the results of possible side effects of years in a few hours. The resort manager states that all the participants of Test 73 lost their lives, but contributed to the advancement of science. He reports that new targets are arriving at the resort and were ready to start a new test. At the resort, the manager tells Idlib that his old friends have gone home and that he should talk to some new kids. At this point, Trent and Maddox recognize a policeman who was vacationing at the resort. They hand the man the notebook with several notes. The new family arrives at the resort and are all welcomed by the manager and his staff. Some drinks are handed to them, but Trent knocks everything on the floor. He reveals the truth to the guests and informs them of his real identity. The boy meets with Idlib and shows him the decoded message. The policeman triggers the reinforcements to take all measures against the human experiments that were taking place in that place. During their escape from the beach, Trent found a passage by letting go of his sister from the corals. He could breathe through small spaces formed by corals on the surface, so they swam until they could get off the beach. Hours later, the policeman informs the survivors that all those responsible at the resort have been arrested, so the two siblings are taken to the airport to live with their aunt. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you liked the video, please like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.